everybody, you guys can check out her book right now. It is the 30-day Self Perception Makeover, where we can make it ever as well. I accidentally dropped Melanie. I'm sorry about that. She's calling back in. I'm sorry about that, Melanie. I didn't mean to drop you. I was trying to drop Cathlene on the air. But let me give you a formal introduction before I put you on the air. Melanie Waxler Snow. She was a very decorated news reporter for many years, and now she's supporting her the next generation journalist as dean of her college of journalism. She's an associate dean, I should say. She's also pursued her passion with her first new fiction novel, Muse, which will be released this week. And she's a really good friend of mine. We've worked together for many, many years, actually up in Indiana. Now she's out of Florida. She's making waves right now. How you doing, Melanie?
Hi, Mark. It's good to talk to you again. I guess I haven't seen you since Terre Haute, Indiana, first TV job. And we worked together on several interesting stories there in the Wabash Valley. So it was really great to get to work with you. But yeah, since then I went through several other TV markets and have landed eventually in the Tampa Bay market and continued reporting here. And left TV and then became a spokesperson for a law enforcement agency, which I did for about 6.5 years. And I just recently started working for a college here in Tampa Bay as the associate dean for the communications and marketing department. So a big change from TV to law enforcement to higher education. A little bit of whiplash there, but definitely it's been fun.
Yeah, I think we just missed each other because I think when you were moving down there, I was moving out here to Vegas. And, I was doing the news thing out here for a little while, and then I got I got burnt out on it and went into other things, including podcasting. So yeah, I mean, it was me and Mel were basically, I would say, we were pretty solid when we were doing the night shift over in Indiana when I was out there living for a while. But, it's great to be able to, to dive into, kind of some of the things that you've been doing since. We've been following each other on Facebook for a while now, and just to see what everybody's doing, all that as well. But it's been interesting to see how the career kind of stays through.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that was always a primary goal for me. I mean, even from the time I was a child, was to get a novel published. In fact, I remember telling my dad, I want to do two things when I grow up. I want to be on TV as a reporter, and I want to write books. And so I'm very fortunate to say that I've been able to do both. And my first novel is officially going to be released in 3 days on the 16th. It's a love story called Muse, and it is published through the Wild Rose Press. And I have 2 other books that are finished and kind of hanging out, waiting on what their future might hold. Another one will be with the Wild Rose Press, I'm hoping. And so yeah, it's exciting. I've already had a lot of pre-orders, and typically love stories. That's not something that I write. I mean, especially working in television, I was more of a crime beat reporter. And this story manifested itself over a period of years. And then toward the end of 2016, I want to say it was probably around September, I just sat down and started writing it. And 3 months later, I had a book. and it was a love story. And I kind of stepped back from it for a moment and was like, oh, wait, I just wrote a novel. And it's a story. And so now what? So then becomes the next question of how do I get it out there? Do I want to even try? And I queried and sent to literary agents and publishers, all the things that you try to do when you're trying to get your book published, and was very fortunate when the Wild Rose Press put their faith in me to put my book out into the world.
Yeah, I know for me as even I even write movies. I write my movies on my another one of my big projects I usually do. When I manifest a storyline or whatever, it sometimes has a tendency to change. It has a tendency to morph because if after years you may, gain a little bit more experience, or you have a random thought that, oh, why don't we go in this direction in terms of the story, or maybe this certain incident happens within a story that makes it, maybe make it a little bit more interesting, or make it a little bit more, make the character a little bit more deep. Was that something that happened with Muse, since you've done it over, had the idea for over a couple of years?
I would definitely say it went through an evolution. It started out as a concept, an idea, definitely inspired by, real things that have happened in my life, but also at the same time, it's a fiction novel. So I'm inspired by random things, and then I find myself just writing down what they mean to me, how they make me feel, and I just start to collect those pieces. And that's sort of my process. I may, see, I'm from East Tennessee originally, so I'm very inspired by the mountains. So if I'm there, I may find myself looking out, over the Smokies, and maybe just the way the fog is hovering over the mountains that particular moment just grabs me. And then the next thing you know, I've knocked out 3,000 words on it. So it's a very organic thing for me. It's a very natural thing. And I really, really am proud of this book, and I believe a lot of people will find that they relate to it more than I think I anticipated when I first wrote it. And I've already had several people that have read it early on with pre-orders that have come up to me and described a similar situation that's happened to them, where the one that got away ends up being the one. And it's a common trope in literature, but it's also something that really happens in real life. And I think there's always that question for some people, did I make the right decision by letting that person go, or by walking away from that relationship? And what kind of life would I have if I had made a different choice? So that's the question this book analyzes, and I think that's what people are going to get out of it, is that, asking that same question of themselves, and if they haven't asked it before. And of course, it is a love story, so there's the love story elements, but being a TV reporter, I had to, of course, incorporate a little bit of that as well, and some crime elements too, because all of those things, I think, factor into creating a full story.
I think there's a little bit more of desire nowadays just to have the idea of reading. It's kind of been interesting because the fact that now that hardcovers are kind of out, but there is sometimes just a desire to just want to read especially a romance nowadays. It seems like it's making a comeback. There was for a while there, I don't think having a romantic book was really that much of a, it kind of went down for a little while, and then now it seems to be coming back again, where they want to sit down and kind of read, read a romantic tale or something like that as well. I mean, are you seeing the same thing right now?
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm noticing here, just within my own community, and with I have a book club here in my neighborhood, actually, and it's the book of the month for February, and so a lot of the women and some men in the book club have already read my book and given their reaction to it. And romance is always going to exist. I'm a big fan of Westerns. I think Westerns for me are the best romance stories because they have everything. They have, of course, there's always a love story component for the most part. There's gun battles in the street. There's people drinking whiskey in bars. There's horses. There's great guitar music generally. So all of those things I think are romantic. And so to be able to take an element of that and turn it into a tangible thing that someone can hold and read, and it's a wonderful feeling. And it's also a very frightening feeling too, because I never thought the book would leave my laptop, to be honest with you. And to see, I walked out of my house the other day and I saw a neighbor walking with my book down the street, and I thought, oh, that's odd. I never thought I would see that in my life, and yet there it was. But yeah, romance it has its place, and I think there's different levels of what a romance can be. I know obviously books like 50 Shades of Grey, hugely popular. This book is not like that. It definitely gets more to the core of desire and want, but then questioning decisions and life choices.
Yeah, another thing too is the fact that you have two books right now that you said that you're kind of in the wings, waiting to see what kind of decisions are going to be made. Is that a little less pressure for you if this ends up becoming successful?
If Muse has some level of success, which I hope, for me, my main hope is that someone reads this book and feels something, feels a connection to it in some way. That's my primary objective. And if there is some level of success that's achieved that allows maybe, for Melanie Snow, my name, to get picked up by a literary agent who may be interested in other things that I've written, that's the long-term goal. I have another novel that I've been working on that it has a romance component but is more crime, and then I have the other one that I mentioned, and it's completed, and it's about a serial killer. So I genre hop a little bit. I don't have one particular type of thing that I prefer writing more than another thing. I just write, and whatever comes out, and it's exciting to sometimes see what comes out of my own head, and sometimes it's a little terrifying. Like with the serial killer stuff. My master's degree is in behavioral criminal psychology, and while I was getting my master's degree, I had to write a lot of papers about serial killers, and Ted Bundy was one that just, was a reoccurring element of that. So I was very inspired by, these reports and papers that I had to write on these people and their behavior and the way they would think. And so that novel is finished, and it's just sitting in my laptop basically. I've sent it out to a few different places, but I haven't really tried to push it that much. It's not being a love story. It doesn't fall under the Wild Rose Press as much. They tend to focus more on things with the love story component. So my serial killer book will have to wait in the wings for a while, but in the meantime, I'm excited about Muse and just really want to see what people think about it. I'm really curious to hear how people feel about it and what they feel after they read it.
Yeah, what were some of the things that you probably read when you were younger?
Oh, I read everything. The back of a shampoo bottle, if it was near me, I would read that. I'm a huge fan of I went through a very big sci-fi phase and fantasy phase. Of course, I loved Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, but I also love the classics. I was a bit of a literature nerd, and I'm very, very proud of that. So when some classmates may have been reading the Cliff Notes, I was the one that was devouring the Scarlet Letter, or I'm a big fan of Proust. I love Marcel Proust. I could read Proust all day. I love Hemingway. I love F. Scott Fitzgerald. I could go on and on. Shakespeare was one of my most favorite things in the world to read in high school and then into college and then just on my own. I was very fortunate. I got to go to England a couple of months ago and go to see Shakespeare's house in Stratford, and that was a huge moment for me. And in fact, my next novel that will be hopefully with the Wild Rose Press, it takes place in England. So that was a very inspiring trip, and took notes the entire time I was there, and just was able to document so many things to help create what will be hopefully the next element of my story.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's kind of interesting just to kind of, linger back to some of the older stuff. And, it's kind of, as much as people think that older stories probably won't relate to them, a lot of them actually do kind of relate to what we're going through, on a day-to-day basis, So, it's always nice to go back and kind of read some of the old stuff, as were some of the classic novels as well. So, and it's interesting. I mean, a lot of us in high school had to read certain things, and maybe some Hemingway, maybe some. Trying to think of who wrote Grapes of Wrath, but yeah, there's a lot of people that kind of had to read and kind of interpret what's going on at those points in time, and sometimes it's a chore, sometimes it's not. Sometimes some of those books kind of even ring very hard to you, that you could really heavily relate to as well. I mean, was there ever a book that kind of you read, it kind of